Hello everyone, this is a video where I will show you how to make a gauge swatch for the Vajra Infinity scarf. This scarf is made up of the brioche technique using Tunisian stitch, and the gauge swatch is not just important to figure out the size of your project, it also contains all the stitches that you need to know to make this scarf. Aside from making the gauge swatch, the only one thing that you will need to know is how to work in a round with two colors, and I will have a separate tutorial for that. So if in case you're feeling intimidated, or if you want to figure out how to do this, this is a great place to start. So I'm going to start with row 1, which is the foundation row. Start with 14 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm going to insert the hook into the back bump of each stitch and each chain and make a stitch there. So this is making the foundation row in the back bumps. This is helpful because it helps a little bit with curling. So it's always a good idea to make these stitches in the back bump. I have a tutorial for this on my blog. I'm going to add all tutorials, a link to all tutorials in this from this video in the description below, so you can find them. Almost there. It sometimes helps me to use my nails. It makes it easier to pick these back loops onto the hook. Alright. So if you look at the bottom, it also gives it a very clean look. I really like working in the back bump. It's a little hard in the beginning, but it's worth the effort. So I'm gonna cast off, chain 1, pull yarn over, pull through 2 loops all the way. Okay, this is the foundation row. Now I'm gonna start working on row 2. So rows 2 and 3 are the same. There's just rib stitches all the way. So I'm going to start working with the rib stitch here. I have a separate tutorial for rib stitches too, if you want to see how to make these in more detail. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the last stitch. So you can see the rib stitches here. I'm going to make the reverse pass, chain yarn over, pull through 2 all the way. So this was row 2, and I'm going to make row 3 exactly the same way, just rib stitches across. Now you need to make sure that your stitches are loose enough for you to be able to make the next row comfortably. If it's not, you might have to wrestle with your project throughout the project, and that won't be easy. So just make sure that your stitches are loose, especially with the twisted stitches. They're hard to pick up if your stitches are too tight. So here's row 2. The other thing I wanted to point out was that it is easy for the yarn to split during the twisted stitches. That's mostly because when you turn your hook to pick up the stitch, it sometimes goes through just half of the yarn and it splits it, so be careful. I ended up doing that a lot of times and then I had to redo my stitches. So here, so that's rows 2 and 3. Now row 4 is, so you skip the first vertical bar, that is the one that's on the hook, and rib stitch 2 times. So 1, 2, and then we're going to make a backward slant combination. So I'm going to pick the next 2 stitches, and I have a separate tutorial for you if you want to learn how to make that backward slant combination. So you pick those 2 stitches, make a twisted decrease, and then pick the back loop of the second stitch and make an increase. So that makes the BSC. And then the next is a forward slant combination. So I'm going to find the back loop of the next stitch. So this one's the next stitch and there's the back loop. And I'm going to do a decrease now, and just wanted to point out that don't forget to pick the same stitch that you made that increase on. So that and the next one, make a decrease, and then just so then there's rib stitch 2 times. So 1 and 2, and then the last stitch. So you can see that reverse, the backward slant and that forward slant. So I'm going to chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, across. That's pretty much how every, well, that is how every rose reverse pass is in this gauge swatch. So it's the same. So there you go. That's how the stitches look. Now on to row 5. Skip the first vertical bar and then make 1 rib stitch, and then so now we're going to continue this slant. So these are the 2 stitches that will be decreased to make that slant. So we see that we have this lone TSS here. So I'm going to make a TSS on top of that, and then a backward slant combination. So there's a backward slant combination. That's the decrease, twisted decrease, and there's my back loop. So back loop increase. So that just sort of continued that slant. So there's the BSC, and then make a rib stitch. A rib stitch, and then a forward slant combination. So that will continue this forward slant. So we do a back loop increase, and we do a forward slant combination. There we go. So that does that. And then we do a twisted TSS. So that's a lone TSS, a twisted TSS. We make a twisted TSS on top of it, and a rib stitch, and a TSS in the last stitch. So here, to make the reverse pass. So that was row 5. So you see that we're starting to see the beginning of a diamond. Now row 6 is rib stitch, we're going to sort of continue this slant, so we're going to make a backward slant combination, that, and then we're going to make another backward slant combination, so pick the next two and there. So there's that one and this one. Now we do a forward slant combination twice, so find the back loop of the next stitch and then decrease, and the back loop of the next and a decrease again. And a rib stitch, and a Tunisian simple stitch. So here we see that a diamond sort of starting to show up now. The reverse pass, this is how it looks after row 6. Now row 7. Row 7 is, again, we skip the first vertical bar, we make a rib stitch. Now we're starting to close the diamond on this row, so rib stitch and then a forward slant combination. So we will make, so this is the first stitch, I'm going to pick the back loop of that one, and here the next two stitches, so that makes that decrease, and then we're going to do it again because we have to do it 2 times, so back loop increase and that stitch and the next stitch, just do a decrease. And now we need to do a backward slant combination, so here are the next 2 stitches. I'm going to pick them both together, and I'm going to find the back loop here, and another one. And then a rib stitch at the end and a Tunisian stitch to finish the row. So we see that we're starting to close the diamond here now, and there's a little tiny diamond inside as well. So if you look at the pattern here, we started this outside stitch, and then we're just going to continue making more of these in the scarf. So I'm going to make the reverse pass. So I'm making this swatch with a heavier weight yarn. This was easier to do for me with the fingering weight yarn. Just so you know, it's the stitches were loose, much looser as compared to this, and I was picking up the stitches much better. This is not bad either, but it was slightly easier in that. So this is the end of row 7, and we see that we have the diamond. So these align well. The slants just sort of form the outer edge of the diamond here. Now on to row 8. Now we the first vertical bar, then a rib stitch, and a simple stitch. So we have this lone stitch here, so I'm going to make a simple stitch, and then a forward slant combination. So I'm going to find the back loop, and then there's a decrease that's continuing this decrease, the slant just continues there, and then there's a rib stitch, and then a backward slant combination. So this, so here, I'm sorry, here, so this stitch and this stitch, these two stitches will make a backward slant combination on those. So there, and here's the back loop increase, and then there's this lone stitch here. We'll make a twisted TSS there because it aligns with the rest of the twisted stitches. Then a rib stitch, and the last stitch. So the diamond inside is now closed here, this little, and we have this outer diamond. I think it'll close in the next round, in the next row. So okay, now the last, the reverse pass. Now on to row 9. So now you skip the first vertical bar and then rib stitch twice, one, two, and forward slant combination. So find the back loop of the next stitch, and decrease, and then a backward slant combination. So we do a twisted decrease and a back loop increase there. See, this diamond also closed up now, so this, you see the edge of the diamond. Okay, now rib stitch into 2, 1 and 2, and the last stitch here. So let's just make the reverse pass now. Oops. Okay, this is what it's looking like so far. I like the clean bottom edge, I really do. Okay, now I'm going to get to row 10. So we skip the first vertical bar, that's this one, and then we make rib stitch 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, and then the last stitch. And the reverse pass. That's what it's looking like. And now binding off. So to bind off, I'm going to go the simple the slip stitch route. You're welcome to do the single crochet. I actually used the single crochet in to bind off in the actual in my scarf. It seemed better there, so you can pick whichever you'd like. So for this we will rib stitch 6 times, but instead of leaving this loop here, I'm just going to pull it through the previous one. So the next stitch is a twisted stitch, and again, instead of leaving that on there, I'm just going to pull through. So every time you will have just one loop on the hook. And the last stitch. So this is what the gauge swatch should look like. To figure out the size of your project, you will have to measure this. I would recommend measuring it after you block, so that you would know, you would have a better estimate of what the size is going to be. But if you don't want to do that, you could just measure this to get an approximate, and that's pretty much it. I will see you in my other tutorials. Bye.